29, emotionally intelligent, and tired. So tired. Husband is Andrew, 31. You know the type. Works a decent job, provides, whatever. But emotionally, it's like living with a brick wall that occasionally asks what's for dinner. Our marriage has been circling the drain for what feels like an eternity. I'm the only one bailing water with a teaspoon while he's busy drilling holes in the bottom of the boat. It's not like he's a bad guy, not in the way you see in movies. He doesn't yell, he doesn't throw things. It's something much quieter, much more insidious. It's the crushing weight of his indifference. I'm the one who has to carry the entire emotional load of this relationship. I have to be the planner, the talker, the feeler, the problem solver. He just exists, a passenger in his own life, and I'm the unpaid chauffeur, tour guide, and cruise director. You're probably wondering how we got to this point. Honestly, it's been a slow burn. A million tiny things that pile up until you're buried under them. Let me give you a perfect, frustratingly mundane example from a few months back. The dishwasher incident. It sounds stupid, right? A fight over a dishwasher. But it's not about the appliance. It's a metaphor for everything. I had a long day at work, came home, cooked dinner, and cleaned up the kitchen. The dishwasher was full of clean dishes. All I asked him to do was unload it so I could load the dirty ones. A simple task. A 10-minute job. I gave him clear, concise instructions. Andrew, can you please unload the dishwasher? The plates go in the left cabinet, bowls in the right, mugs on the second shelf. I even smiled. I was being collaborative, a team player. He grunted from the couch, not even looking up from his phone. An hour later, I walk into the kitchen. The dishwasher is still sitting there, full. I take a deep breath. I tell myself not to get angry. Communication is key. Hey, honey, did you get a chance to unload the dishwasher? He looks up, feigning surprise. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Forgot. How do you forget a direct request made an hour ago in the same room? Fine, I let it slide. I'm the bigger person. Okay, could you do it now, please? I need to load these dirty dishes. He lets out this huge theatrical sigh. The sigh of a deeply put-upon man asked to do the bare minimum. He gets up, lumbers over to the dishwasher, and starts unloading it. But the way he does it, it's pure sabotage. It's a textbook case of weaponized incompetence. He puts the small plates where the large plates go. He shoves the bowls into the plate slots so they're all crooked. The mugs, which I specifically said, go on the second shelf. He crams onto the top shelf with the glasses, where they don't fit properly. He knows. He absolutely knows where everything goes. We've lived in this house for 3 years. He's not an idiot. He's just pretending to be one, so I'll get frustrated and do it myself. And what do? Like an absolute clown, I get frustrated and do it myself. No, that's not right, I say, trying to keep my voice even. I gently push him aside and start rearranging everything correctly. He just stands there with this blank look on his face. See? This is why I don't do it. You always just redo it anyway. Gaslighting, pure and simple. He creates the problem, then blames me for my reaction to the problem. I wanted to scream. Instead, I just finished the job in silence while he went back to the couch and his phone, his duty fulfilled. He probably felt like a hero. I felt like an unpaid housekeeper who also had to manage her own husband's passive aggression. That's just one example. It's like that with everything. Laundry, he'll wash the whites with a red sock. Grocery shopping, he'll come back with half the list missing and a bunch of junk food. Planning a date night, an impossible task. I have to research the restaurant, make the reservation, decide what time we leave. If I left it up to him, our big night out would be him asking me what I want to get for takeout at 8 p.m. It's exhausting. Then there's the emotional side of things, the real black hole of our marriage. He doesn't talk about anything. I try to connect with him to understand what's going on in his head. Andrew, how are you feeling? You seem quiet today. I'm fine. Just fine. You can talk to me, you know. Is something wrong at work? No, work is fine. Okay. Well, is there anything on your mind? Anything you want to share? Not really. It's like trying to get blood from a stone. He's built these walls around himself, and I'm just supposed to be happy living in the courtyard, never allowed inside the castle. My friends see it. They're all so supportive. We have our group chat, and they're my lifeline. I'll tell them about the dishwasher incident, and they get it immediately. Classic man-child behavior, one will text. He's making you do all the emotional labor, Lydia, another will say. You deserve a partner, not a project. They see me. They validate my feelings. When I'm with them, I feel sane. I feel like I'm not the crazy one. But then I come home, and the silence is deafening. The final straw came a few weeks ago. It was after a party at my friend's house. I was excited to go. I got dressed up, did my makeup, felt good about myself. Andrew, of course, complained about having to go until the very last minute. He put on a wrinkled shirt and jeans. Zero effort. At the party, he was a ghost. I would be in the middle of a conversation, laughing with my friends, and I'd look over and see him, just standing in a corner, staring at his phone, looking miserable. He made no effort to mingle, to talk to anyone. I had to do all the social heavy lifting for both of us. Oh, Andrew's just a little shy, I'd say, forcing a smile. He's had a long week at work, I'd lie, trying to cover for him. It was humiliating. On the car ride home, I couldn't take the silence anymore. Did you have a good time? I asked, knowing the answer. It was okay. Just okay? You barely spoke to anyone all night. You just stood in the corner. It was embarrassing, Andrew. He didn't say anything, just stared straight ahead at the road. That's his move, the silent treatment, stonewalling. He knows it drives me crazy. He knows it makes me feel like I'm screaming into a void. I started to cry. Silent, frustrated tears rolling down my cheeks. I was so tired of feeling alone, even when he was sitting right next to me. He glanced over, saw the tears. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice completely flat, devoid of any emotion. That's what broke me. The fact that he had to ask. The fact that he couldn't see the chasm that had opened up between us. I didn't answer him. I just cried all the way home. When we got inside, I went straight to the bedroom and he went to the living room to watch TV, like nothing had happened, like his wife wasn't having a complete emotional breakdown. I laid in bed that night and I made a decision. This couldn't go on. I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life with a roommate who shared my bed. I wanted a partner. I deserved a partner. If he wasn't willing to change, then I was done. But I decided to give it one last shot. One final nuclear option. Therapy. The next day, I confronted him. He was on the couch, of course, scrolling on his phone. I stood in front of the TV, blocking his view. "Andrew, we need to talk." He looked up, annoyed. "Can it wait? I'm watching this." "No, it can't. I'm done. I can't do this anymore." That got his attention. He finally put his phone down. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about us. This, whatever this is. It's not a marriage. I am desperately unhappy, and you don't seem to care." He had the audacity to look confused. "I care." "Of course I care." "No, you don't. Caring is an action. It's not just a word you say. You don't participate in this marriage. You're a spectator." I laid it all out. The emotional labor, the weaponized incompetence, the stonewalling. I used all the terms. I wanted him to understand that this wasn't just me being emotional. These were real, definable concepts. Things that other people recognized as toxic. He just sat there, taking it all in. His face was unreadable. "So, what do you want to do?" he finally asked, his voice quiet. "I want to go to couples therapy," I said. "I've already researched some places. I want a professional to help us, to help you." I emphasized the you. I wanted him to know where the problem was. "I think we need someone to give you the tools to be a better partner, to learn how to communicate." He was silent for a long time. I could see the wheels turning in his head. He was probably trying to figure out a way to get out of it. "If you say no," I said, my voice shaking a little, "then I'm going to pack a bag. I mean it, Andrew." It was the ultimate ultimatum, his choice. Fix himself or lose me. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something flicker in his eyes. I couldn't tell if it was fear or resignation. "Okay," he said, "I'll go." I felt this wave of relief wash over me. Victory. He finally understood how serious this was. He was willing to get help. There was hope for us, after all. I spent the next few days in a state of manic energy. I was the one who did all the research, of course. I looked up dozens of therapists in our area. I specifically looked for a woman. I felt a female therapist would be more empathetic to my situation. She would understand the concept of emotional labor without me having to explain it. She would recognize toxic masculinity when she saw it. I found the perfect one, Dr. Sharma. Her website was amazing. It was all about holistic communication strategies and fostering empathetic partnerships. Her photo showed a kind, intelligent-looking woman in her late 40s or early 50s. She had glowing reviews. Dr. Sharma saved our marriage. She gave us the tools we needed to reconnect. This was it. This was the woman who was going to fix my husband. I called and made the appointment. The receptionist was so nice. I felt so validated just talking to her. When I told Andrew I'd booked our first session, he just nodded. "It's next week," I said. "I've already put it in your calendar." He didn't ask any questions. Not about the therapist, not about the cost, not about what he should expect. Classic avoidance. But it didn't matter. He had agreed to go. That was the first step. The week leading up to the appointment was tense. We barely spoke. We were like two ships passing in the night. I spent my evenings preparing. I made a list. A detailed, bullet-pointed list of all of Andrew's faults and all the incidents that had led us here. I wanted to be prepared. I wanted to give Dr. Sharma a clear, concise picture of the problem. The dishwasher incident was at the top of the list, followed by the party, his communication failures, his lack of initiative, everything. I even made sub-bullets. I felt like a lawyer preparing for a big case. And, in a way, I was. I was fighting for my marriage. The morning of the appointment, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. It was a mixture of nerves and excitement. This was it. The day of the intervention. I got dressed carefully. I wanted to look put together. I wanted to look like a woman who had her life in order, despite her husband's shortcomings. Andrew was quiet as usual. He put on a clean shirt, but he still looked rumpled, defeated. Good, I thought. Let him feel a little uncomfortable. Change doesn't happen in the comfort zone. The car ride to the therapist's office was the most silent 20 minutes of my life. I was rereading the list on my phone, memorizing my opening statement. Andrew just drove, both hands on the steering wheel, his knuckles white. He looked terrified. I almost felt a little sorry for him. Almost. But this was for his own good, for our own good. Tough love. Dr. Sharma's office was in a nice, quiet building. The waiting room was calm and peaceful, with a little fountain and soft music playing. It was all very professional. I felt reassured. We sat in two separate chairs, not touching, not speaking. I felt the other people in the waiting room looking at us, probably guessing why we were there. I wanted to tell them, "It's him. I'm here to fix him." After a few minutes, a door opened. "Lydia, Andrew." It was her, Dr. Sharma. She looked exactly like her photo, warm, professional, with intelligent eyes. I immediately felt a connection. She was going to be my ally. She led us into her office. It was cozy, with a comfortable-looking couch and two armchairs. There was a box of tissues on the table. I made a mental note of that. I would probably need them. "Please, have a seat wherever you're comfortable," she said, her voice calm and even. I chose the couch. I wanted to present a united front, even if it was a facade. I patted the cushion next to me, a clear invitation for Andrew to sit with me. He hesitated for a second, then walked over and sat in one of the armchairs across from me. So much for a united front. He was already putting up a wall, literally. Dr. Sharma didn't comment on it. She just sat down in the other armchair, placing us in a little triangle. She smiled warmly at both of us. "So, thank you for coming in today. It takes courage to take this step. Lydia, you made the initial call. Perhaps you'd like to start by telling me what brought you both here." I took a deep breath. Showtime. I had rehearsed this. I had my list. I was ready. "Thank you, doctor. Well, to be blunt, our marriage is failing. And it's failing because I feel like I'm the only one putting in any effort." I looked at Andrew. His eyes were fixed on the carpet. "I've done so much work on myself. I read books. I listened to podcasts on relational psychology. I actively try to be a better partner, but I'm met with a wall of indifference and passive aggression." I started to lay it all out. I brought up the emotional labor, the mental load. I explained that I was the manager of our household, our social lives, and our relationship, and that it was an exhausting, unpaid, and unappreciated job. "Andrew suffers from what I believe is a deep-seated toxic masculinity," I explained, trying to sound as clinical and objective as possible. "He's been conditioned not to show emotion, not to communicate, not to be vulnerable, and it's poisoning our marriage." I pulled out my phone. I've actually made a list of specific examples, if that would be helpful. Dr. Sharma nodded. Please, go ahead. I started with the dishwasher incident. I recounted it in painstaking detail, framing it as a clear case of weaponized incompetence. I talked about his silence, labeling it as stonewalling. I mentioned how he never initiated anything, from date nights to difficult conversations, forcing me into the role of the nagging wife. I explained that he gaslights me by making me feel like my reactions to his inaction are the problem, rather than his inaction itself. I went on for a good 10 minutes, my voice gaining confidence with every word. I was articulating my pain perfectly. I was laying out an airtight case. Andrew didn't move a muscle the entire time. He just stared at the floor, a statue of a man. When I finally finished, I felt drained, but also vindicated. I had said my piece. I had laid all the cards on the table. Now, Dr. Sharma could get to work. Now, she could start fixing him. I leaned back on the couch, took a sip of water, and looked at her expectantly. She was jotting down notes in a little book. She finished writing, then put her pen down. There was a long, heavy silence in the room. I waited for her to turn to Andrew and say, Andrew, your wife has brought up some very serious issues. Let's talk about why you're behaving this way. But she didn't. She looked at me. Not a glance. A steady, analytical gaze. My triumphant smile probably faded a little. I was expecting her to look at Andrew. Lydia, she said, her voice still perfectly calm. Thank you for sharing all of that. I can see you've given this a lot of thought. I nodded. I have. I've been living it. I'd like to go back to the first example you gave, she continued. The dishwasher. I straightened up. Perfect. My strongest piece of evidence. You said you asked him to unload it, and he did it incorrectly. He did it on purpose, I corrected her. It was weaponized incompetence. Dr. Sharma didn't even blink at the term. Tell me, Lydia, what were the exact words you used when you asked him to do it? I blinked. An odd question. The details weren't the point. The dynamic was. I don't remember exactly. It was a while ago. Something like, Andrew, could you please unload the dishwasher? Is that all you said? She asked, her gaze unwavering. I felt a prickle of annoyance. Why was I the one being cross-examined? No, I admitted. I might have added something like, and please try to do it right this time. A flicker of something crossed Andrew's face. It was gone before I could identify it. So, before he even started the task, you introduced the idea that he was likely to fail at it, Dr. Sharma stated. It wasn't a question. I was just trying to prevent him from doing it wrong again. It's about efficiency. Andrew, she said, turning to him for the first time. What did you hear when Lydia said that to you? He shifted in his chair. It was the first time he had moved in what felt like an hour. He cleared his throat. I heard, he said, his voice quiet but clear, that I'm an idiot. That I can't even do a simple chore right. That she was already angry at me for something I hadn't even done yet. My jaw tightened. He was being so dramatic. That's not what I meant at all, I said, looking at Dr. Sharma for backup. She was looking at Andrew. So, what did you feel in that moment? Defeated, he said simply. I felt like, what's the point? No matter how I do it, it's going to be wrong. She's going to come in and fix it anyway, so I just did it. I put the stuff away. Maybe I didn't put it in the exact right spot. I don't know. I just wanted it to be over. I had to redo the whole thing, I interjected, my voice rising. He made more work for me. Lydia, Dr. Sharma said, her voice cutting through my frustration. There's a concept called a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you expect someone to fail, you often treat them in a way that makes that failure more likely. Your initial request was not a collaborative appeal for help. It was a criticism disguised as a request. I was stunned into silence. A criticism disguised as a request? That was ridiculous. I was just being clear. What you call weaponized incompetence, she continued, can often be a response to constant criticism. It's called learned helplessness. A person stops trying to do things correctly because they've learned that their efforts will never be seen as good enough. Learned helplessness. She was using her own jargon against mine. This wasn't going how I'd planned, at all. I felt my carefully constructed case start to crumble at the edges. Okay, I said, trying to regain control. Okay, fine. Maybe the dishwasher thing wasn't the best example. But what about the stonewalling? That's a classic sign of emotional abuse. He shuts down completely. He refuses to communicate. I looked at Andrew, daring him to deny it. He just looked at his hands again. Dr. Sharma nodded slowly. Let's talk about that. Andrew, your wife says you shut down when she wants to discuss your relationship. Can you tell me what that's like for you? He took a deep breath. It's not that I don't want to talk, he began, speaking to the therapist, not to me. It's that I don't know how to talk to her about this stuff. It feels like walking through a minefield. A minefield? In what way? Every conversation about us feels like an attack on me, he said. It starts with, we need to talk, and then she pulls out a list of everything I've done wrong this week. My words are picked apart. If I say I'm tired, it means I don't care about her. If I try to explain my point of view, I'm being defensive. If I apologize, it's not the right kind of apology. He finally looked at me. Last month she was upset about something, and I tried to apologize. I said, I'm sorry you feel that way. And she exploded. She said that's a non-apology, that I was invalidating her feelings. It is, I said to Dr. Sharma. That's textbook. He's not apologizing for his actions. He's apologizing for my reaction. And what would a correct apology have sounded like to you, Lydia? Dr. Sharma asked. It would sound like, Lydia, I'm sorry for what I did. I was wrong. I understand why my actions hurt you, and I will do X, Y, and Z to make sure it never happens again. I said it with conviction. It was what all the articles said. A real apology takes full ownership. Dr. Sharma looked at Andrew. Andrew, could you have said those words? He shook his head. No, because I didn't think I had done anything wrong. I thought she was overreacting, but I couldn't say that. So I tried to meet her halfway. I tried to acknowledge her feelings even if I didn't understand them. It was the only honest thing I could say. So, the choice you felt you had, Dr. Sharma summarized, was either to lie and recite a script you didn't believe, or to tell your truth and escalate the conflict. Yes, he said. And I've learned that escalating the conflict is always worse. So, most of the time, I just say nothing. It's safer. I felt a hot flush of anger. So, this is my fault? It's my fault he won't talk to me? I asked Dr. Sharma, my voice shaking. I'm not assigning fault, Lydia. I'm trying to understand the dynamic, she said calmly. But it appears that your communication style doesn't leave much room for a different point of view. A conversation requires two people to be able to speak freely. It seems that in your relationship, only you have the floor. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was a nightmare. I had come here to get a diagnosis for my husband's problems, and instead, I was being put under a microscope. But I'm the one who has to do all the work, I said, my voice cracking. I could feel the tears welling up. I'm the one carrying the entire emotional load of this relationship. I have to remember his mother's birthday. I have to plan our vacations. I have to be the one to initiate every single important conversation we've ever had. Don't you see? I'm exhausted from doing the emotional labor for two people. I grabbed a tissue from the box. The tears were real. This was my truth, my pain. She had to see that. Dr. Sharma let me cry for a moment. She looked at me with an expression that I thought was sympathy, but now I wasn't so sure. It was more clinical. Lydia, what do you believe emotional labor is? She asked gently. It's all the invisible work that goes into maintaining a relationship, I said, wiping my eyes. The remembering, the planning, the anticipating needs, the stuff that just gets done, usually by the woman, without any recognition or thanks. I see, she said. And you feel you do all of that in your marriage? I know I do, I said. Andrew wouldn't even know his own cousin's wedding date if I didn't write it on the calendar and remind him 3 times. Let me ask you this, Lydia. Has Andrew ever tried to plan something for the two of you? I had to think about it. Once, I said reluctantly. A long time ago. For our anniversary. What happened? He tried to surprise me. He booked a table at some restaurant he saw online. It was a steakhouse. He knows I'm trying to eat less red meat, and he booked it for 8:30 p.m. I hate eating that late. I had to call and change the reservation to a different restaurant at an earlier time. He got all moody about it. So he made an attempt to take on the labor of planning a date, Dr. Sharma said, and your response was to take over and correct his attempt because it wasn't up to your specific standards. It would have been a bad evening, I defended myself. I was just making it better. For you, she said. But in the process, you sent him a very clear message. Your efforts are not good enough. I can do it better. Did he ever try to plan another surprise date? I didn't answer. We both knew he hadn't. Lydia, she said, leaning forward slightly. It seems to me that you're not upset that you're doing all the emotional labor. You're upset that you're not being appreciated for it. But you've created a system where it's impossible for your husband to participate. You don't want a partner in these tasks. You want a well-trained assistant who executes your vision flawlessly. My mouth fell open. An assistant. She thought I was treating my husband like an assistant. That is the most unfair thing I have ever heard, I whispered. Is it? She pressed. You criticize how he loads the dishwasher instead of being grateful he's helping. You script his apologies for him. You take over his plans and remake them in your image. You've positioned yourself as the manager of this relationship. And then you resent him for acting like an employee instead of a co-owner. I looked over at Andrew. He was just sitting there, listening. His expression was no longer defeated. It was attentive. He was hearing someone articulate things he had probably never been able to put into words himself. He wasn't my ally. He was a witness for the prosecution. And I was on trial. I felt cornered, attacked. So what am I supposed to do? I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Just let him load the dishwasher wrong and eat off dirty plates? Let him plan a terrible anniversary dinner and pretend to enjoy it? Should I just lower all my standards to 0? Or, Dr. Sharma suggested, you could try accepting that his way of doing things is just as valid as yours, even if it's different. You could let a plate be in the wrong spot. You could enjoy a dinner that you didn't plan, even if it's not perfect. You could create space for him to be a true partner, not just someone who follows your instructions. Partnership involves compromise and accepting imperfection. What you're describing is a desire for control. Control. She was painting me as some kind of control freak, a dictator. Me, the one who just wanted an equal partnership. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. This is unbelievable, I said, shaking my head and looking around the room as if I was on a hidden camera show. I came here for help from my husband. He is emotionally shut down. He has all the classic symptoms of toxic masculinity. He can't communicate. He can't be vulnerable. He doesn't contribute. And you're turning this all around on me. I'm not turning it around, Lydia, she said, her voice still infuriatingly calm. I'm looking at the system you both have created. You see a problem with your husband. What I see is a problematic dynamic that you both play a role in. You have cast yourself as the victim and him as the villain. But it might be more accurate to say that you are the speaker and he is the audience. And it seems you've been delivering a monologue for a very long time. I stood up. I couldn't sit there and listen to this for one more second. I'm done. This is a joke. My hands were shaking with rage. You're supposed to be a professional. You're supposed to help him. He's the one who's broken. Can't you see that? I pointed at Andrew, who flinched. Dr. Sharma looked at him, then back at me. Lydia, the only person in this room who is refusing to look at their own behavior right now is you, she said, her tone finally hardening just a little. You didn't come here to fix your marriage. You came here to get a professional to co-sign your assessment of your husband. You came here looking for an ally to help you change him. She paused, letting the words hang in the air. I'm a therapist, not a hired gun. Those last words hit me like a physical blow. Hired gun. She was accusing me of trying to use her, to manipulate the situation. My face was burning, a hot, shameful heat that spread down my neck. I looked from her calm, unyielding face to my husband's. He was just watching me. No anger, no smirk of victory. Just a quiet, profound sadness in his eyes. That was almost worse. I felt completely and utterly exposed. I am not paying for this session, I heard myself say, the words sounding childish even to my own ears. This was a complete waste of time. You're incompetent. I was grasping at straws, trying to find any insult that would wound her the way she had wounded me. You're probably just one of those therapists who sides with men because of some kind of internalized misogyny, I spat. It was a low blow, and I knew it. I was just throwing my own jargon back at her, hoping something would stick, would hurt. She didn't even flinch. She just gave a small, almost imperceptible sigh. It was the sigh of someone who had heard this all before. I couldn't stand being in that room for another second. I grabbed my purse, my hands fumbling with the strap. I'm leaving, I announced to the room, to no one in particular. I turned and walked to the door, not looking back. I didn't want to see Andrew's face. I didn't want to see hers. I practically ran out of the office, past the calm waiting room with the little fountain, and burst out into the hallway. The door to the office suite clicked shut behind me. I stood there for a second, my heart hammering in my chest. I half expected Andrew to come running after me, to apologize, to smooth things over. He didn't. I walked to the elevator, my heels clicking loudly in the silent building. The ride down felt like an eternity. When I got out to the parking lot, I realized I didn't have the car keys. Andrew had driven. Of course he had. One more thing I hadn't controlled. I stood by the car, fuming, feeling like a fool. I had to just stand there and wait for him. A few minutes later, he came out of the building. He walked over to the car, his posture different. He wasn't hunched over like he usually was. His shoulders were back. He looked lighter. He didn't say a word to me. He just unlocked the doors with the fob. We both got in. The silence in the car on the way home was completely different from the silence on the way there. Before, it had been a tense, anxious silence. Now, it was a heavy, dead silence. The silence of an ending. I kept replaying the session in my head, over and over. A criticism disguised as a request. Learned helplessness. You don't want a partner, you want a well-trained assistant. I'm a therapist, not a hired gun. The words echoed, each one a fresh sting. She had taken my entire narrative, the story I had so carefully crafted about my marriage, about my victimhood, and she had torn it to shreds in less than an hour. And she had done it in front of Andrew. She had given him a vocabulary for his own feelings, a defense against my accusations. She had armed him. I risked a glance at him. He was just focused on the road, a serene expression on his face. It was the calmest I had seen him look in years. It made me furious. When we pulled into our driveway, he turned off the engine. I expected him to finally say something, to gloat, or to start a fight, or to demand an apology. He did none of those things. He just unbuckled his seatbelt, got out of the car, and walked into the house, leaving me sitting there. I stayed in the car for another 10 minutes, just trying to breathe. My grand plan had backfired in the most spectacular way possible. I had wanted to force a change, and I had. Just not the one I intended. When I finally went inside, the house was quiet. Andrew was in the kitchen, not sulking, not hiding. He was pulling ingredients out of the fridge. He was making himself dinner. He didn't ask me if I was hungry. He didn't try to make small talk. He just moved around the space with a quiet efficiency I hadn't seen in a long time. I walked past him and went to our bedroom, closing the door behind me. I half expected him to follow, to try and talk, but he didn't. I heard the sounds of him cooking, the clatter of a pan, the sizzle of oil. Then I heard the TV turn on in the living room. He was just living his life, without me at the center of it, managing it, directing it. I spent the rest of the evening in the bedroom, a self-imposed exile. I kept waiting for the dynamic to reset, for him to eventually crack and come to me, needing me to tell him what to do or how to feel. But the hours ticked by, and he left me completely alone. It was unnerving. The power balance in our home had been completely upended. The silence that I had always accused him of using as a weapon now felt like it was being used against me. It wasn't an angry silence, though. It was a peaceful one. And that was the most terrifying part. He wasn't punishing me. He was just okay. He was okay without me. Later that night, he came into the bedroom to go to sleep. He got ready for bed without a word, got into his side, and turned off the light. He didn't try to touch me. He didn't say goodnight. He just turned on his side, away from me, and within minutes I could hear the sound of his steady, even breathing as he fell asleep. I lay there in the dark for hours, wide awake. My mind was racing. Was she right? Was any of what she said true? Had I really created this dynamic myself? Had I pushed him into a corner with my constant criticism and my need for control until he had no choice but to shut down? Had I mistaken my own rigidity for high standards? The thought was terrifying. Because if she was right, then I wasn't the victim. I was the architect of my own misery. The next morning, the new normal continued. He got up, got ready for work, and left. He made his own coffee. He didn't ask if I needed anything. It was like a switch had been flipped. It was like that therapy session hadn't broken him. It had liberated him. He was no longer walking on eggshells around me, because he had realized that I was the one who had laid the eggshells. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't live in this cold, silent truce. My first instinct was to reach out to my friends. my support system. I pulled out my phone and opened our group chat. I started typing, my thumbs flying across the screen. I told them everything, how the therapist had turned on me, how she had sided with Andrew, how she had used feminist-sounding language to blame me for everything. I painted Dr. Sharma as an anti-woman quack, a traitor to the cause. I described Andrew's new behavior, his coldness, his distance. I framed it as him being emboldened by the therapist, that he now felt justified in his neglect. I hit send and waited for the wave of validation and sympathy to roll in. I waited for the, "Oh my God, Lydia, that's horrible," and the, "You need to leave him," and the, "What a terrible therapist." But the response was muted. "Wow, that sounds intense," one friend wrote back. "Sorry you had a bad experience," said another. There was no outrage on my behalf, no rallying cry. It was like they didn't know what to say. And then one of them, the one who was usually my biggest cheerleader, sent a message that made my blood run cold. "Lydia, I love you, but is it possible the therapist had a point about some things? I mean, you do admit you can be a little controlling sometimes." I stared at the message. Betrayal. Even my own friends were siding with them. I threw my phone onto the bed. I had no allies left. Not my therapist, not my husband, not even my friends. I was completely, utterly alone. That evening, when Andrew came home from work, I was sitting on the couch in the living room waiting for him. He walked in, saw me, and his face was neutral. No fear, no anxiety. "Andrew," I said, my voice small, "we need to talk." He didn't sigh. He didn't look annoyed. He just took off his coat, hung it up, and came and sat in the armchair across from me. The same one he had sat in at the therapist's office. He waited. And for the first time, I had no list. I had no pre-prepared speech. I had no jargon. All I had was the crushing silence and the terrifying realization that I didn't know how to have a conversation where I wasn't in complete control. I didn't know how to be a partner. I just knew how to be a manager, and my only employee had finally quit.